Okay, welcome back after this lunch break. I know it's the hardest time of the day. You all tend to fall asleep despite the coffee and the sweets outside. That's why we have asked John Franklin to do the next presentation, because he for sure can keep you awake. So John is talking about how safety intelligence builds the EPAS, the European Plan for Aviation Safety. And I think we had some questions yesterday how the EPAS and the rulemaking activities are linked. And I think John will tell us a bit more in detail how we build the EPAS and how safety intelligence plays into that. So John, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully what we're going to do this afternoon is give you a bit of an insight into how we build the European Plan for Aviation Safety. We get lots of questions, unsurprisingly, about what the EPAS is, how it works, how we come up with it. And if you don't know much about the EPAS, essentially what it is the strategic plan that drives the strategic safety actions that the agency carries out in support of the wider European aviation community. Now, there's a general perception that we sit in our nice office here in Cologne, in our little ivory tower, and that we come up with this plan from all the good ideas that we have in an office full of European civil servants. We decide what happens, what tasks that we do, and that you as industry then have to deal with the consequences of the tasks that we magically dream up from all the great ideas we have in our heads. So hopefully what the next 15-20 minutes is going to do is to make you feel a little bit better that there is actually a lot of thought, a lot of data, a lot of safety intelligence and information, and particularly a lot of collaboration and discussion that goes into what forms the EPAS and the activities that we carry out within the agency and with all the different collaborative partners. And this world collaboration is a key part of the theme of how the EPAS is put together. And particularly from my side, working in our Safety Intelligence and Performance Department, working together and collaborating with industry is really the only way that we can build this picture of safety and make the right decisions in order to improve safety in the long term. So on the right-hand side here, we have the EPAS itself, all the different actions that make up how we improve safety for the long term. And the foundation of that comes from the safety data, the analysis, all the different intelligence sources that we put together in order to try and figure out what are the most important things that we should be worrying about. What are the key safety risks we have? What are the key safety risks you have in all the different parts of industry? And then we feed that through our European safety risk management process in order to help us figure out, firstly, what are the key risks, which are the most important, what are the potential solutions to those problems, and then ultimately, what are the different actions that we carry out. And just to give you a bit more of an insight at a really simple level as to what that safety risk management process really looks like, and this is obviously a gross oversimplification of what is in reality a very complex analytical and technical process that has collaboration at the very heart of it. So the first stage then is what we call our safety issue identification. And really what we're talking about is, are we worrying about the right things? If nothing else, what we're trying to capture, not just from ourselves in the agency, from other regulators, but also from the industry, is that if there are safety problems, safety concerns that keep people awake at night, what are those things that keep us awake at night? What's the foundation as to why those are problems in the system? What the safety issues are? What data is there to reinforce our understanding of those problems? And then we prioritize the safety issues. If you look in our annual safety review, in each of the different domains, we have these domain safety risk portfolios. And that captures, firstly, the operational accident outcomes we're trying to prevent, or the key risk areas, that, as we call them. Excuse me. And we're talking about things like airborne conflict, airborne collisions, loss of control, runway excursions, runway incursions, all the different types of accident outcome that we can have. And then on the other side of that, we have the safety issues, the causal and contributory factors, all the way back as far as design, production, to the operational contribution, human factors, organizational factors that lead to those different accident outcomes. And having identified those safety issues, we then start a prioritized set of risk assessments to identify from those safety issues what are the key factors, where are the weak barriers in the system, and then what are the potential actions that we can then have both at strategic level within the EPAS and perhaps elsewhere in industry that will help us to fill in those weak barriers, to make them stronger, so that we're less likely to have these accidents. Then, once we've got these potential actions, there's a whole collaborative and an advisory body process that reviews those actions, considers the impact and the benefit, what's it going to cost, how many organizations is it going to impact, all of these things. And then we clearly define the actions, they go through a review process, and then at the end of step 3 is effectively the EPAS as a document. We then move into the implementation phase. So it's completing rulemaking tasks, doing safety promotion, research activities, focused oversight, all of these kinds of things. And then as with any good system, we then have a feedback loop where we do safety performance monitoring and safety performance measurement that then enables us to check, have the actions had the desired effect on the system that we wanted? Are they working? We also look at the rest of the system and see, are there new safety issues in the short term, in the medium term, and then also trying to look in the longer term to see how's the changing technological environment, the global world, all of these things leading to change in the system that we might need to start thinking about strategically in the EPAS. And then we begin the cycle again and continually reviewing the safety issues. Do we have the right issues? Do we have the right priorities? Are we spending our analysis time and resources and the work we do collaboratively with other organizations, are we doing those in the right areas? And continually reviewing the work and collaborating on how we do that. So the big question then is, how do we build up this intelligence picture? Where does it come from? What does it look like? All of these different things. And I'd like to highlight what I think is quite a good way of showing this and as an example. So here we have on the left a nice picture of a world-famous European landmark. Now, you wouldn't go on holiday and proudly come back with a pack of holiday photographs on your phone that looked like that and show all your friends and family what a fantastic holiday you had. So our goal is to try and build up a picture like that on the right. The more detail we have, the better the decisions that we can make in the EPAS. And the picture's made up of lots of different things. You know, we have lots of different operational domains of aviation with lots of different stakeholders who have different pieces of knowledge, pieces of information. Every one of you in this room probably has a great view of what the risks and issues are within your own organization. But when you look forward to how we do that in the EPAS, what you have in your heads, in your own organizations, the challenge we have is how do we collaborate and work together with industry so that we can build up an intelligence picture that looks like the one on the right, so that we really start to understand what the right safety issues are, what the right problems are we're solving. And at the heart of that is things like occurrence reporting, data collection, and particularly we see, we very much appreciate the challenges of, as an organization, when people need to report an occurrence, there's this tightrope between how much do you tell your regulator so you don't get in trouble with your regulator, and how much information do you provide that's useful for the regulator. And for us, particularly in the reporting and safety analysis and intelligence world, this is where just culture is vital to us, both in terms of how people in organizations report to the organization, and that's very much the main focus of the occurrence reporting regulation, Regulation 376/2014, is that just culture relationship between people and their organizations. But actually, if you look at the relationship between the regulator and regulated organizations, those same just culture principles start to apply. Because if we want to build a big picture that has the best detail possible, we need to make sure that we establish the right kind of reporting culture, so as organizations, you feel that you can tell us the most that you can about occurrences and what's happening and what the problems are, so that we build that picture. And without that culture and that relationship, and we appreciate there are lots of challenges with that, and it's a continual ongoing piece of work for us, particularly in terms of safety promotion of just culture and how we help that happen in the regulatory community. But it's that just culture that helps us to do that. Now, of course, the occurrence reports themselves are just one piece of the picture. It's really the knowledge in the heads of people like you that really helps to drive how we build that picture up. You know, we can have all the data in the world, but it's really the knowledge and the intelligence rather than the data, the nuggets of the problems and what the potential solutions are. That's the collaborative challenge we continually work to solve within our EPAS process. And for us, collaboration is really the key to help us answer lots of difficult questions. And I have a particularly good example of the type of collaborative problem that we're trying to solve. And a key question I like to highlight collaboration with is the question, where can I find a picture of a roller skating mermaid? Now, on the first Sunday of the summer, the charming American resort city of Coney Island hosts the Mermaid Parade. People come from all over the world to attend this mermaid parade. Some people get dressed up, some people get less dressed up. There's young people, there's old people, there's dancing in the sea, and generally a good time is had by all. And of course, the point of these slides is not the mermaid parade in itself, charming and wonderful though it is. It's actually, the key is the pictures themselves, and more importantly, where I got them. Between Flickr and Instagram, there were 75,873 photos tagged Mermaid Parade, taken by over 25,000 different photographers from almost every country in the world. And through these two simple mediums, over the space of barely 10 minutes, I can quickly and easily come up with a nice little slideshow to hopefully make this presentation a little bit more interesting after lunch than otherwise it would have been. But of course, where does that relate to aviation? I know whenever we talk about this concept of the Mermaid Parade, lots of people look a little confused as to where this is all going. And actually, there's a great read across to the aviation system. You know, we have so many people in so many organizations. I've lost count now. We were up to hundreds of thousands of people across Europe in the aviation system, each of them with pieces of knowledge in their head, pieces of data, experiences, all the things that help us build that picture of what safety looks like that I was showing on the right there. Just through the occurrence reporting regulation, we collect over 150,000 occurrences a year from across Europe. And the challenge within just that reporting regulation, as I say, is how do we get the best information we can? And particularly, this is where your reports come in. You might view your one MOR or occurrence report as just one piece of data. But it's only by getting the most detail of each of those pieces of information and bringing them together can we really start to understand properly what that intelligence picture looks like. When we start then talking about what does SMS within organizations, what does that data picture look like? And traditionally we see 15 to 20% of occurrences within an organization fall under the remit of the reporting regulation and mandatory reporting. So there's another 80% of data, potentially over 1 million occurrences, that we have no idea what they are. They're in your heads as safety managers, as operational people in aviation. And the collaborative effect of bringing that intelligence together is just mind-blowing. And some of the discussions we can have with people in organisations about what's really bothering you, what are the real operational safety challenges you have, and how can we work to solve them is a key part of the EPAS process. So it's about how do we bring all of that together to really make sense of the European safety picture. So how do we do that? Well, as I say, the European safety risk management process helps us bring that together at a collaborative level. So we have a number of what we call collaborative analysis groups, or CAGs, and effectively that's where we bring together people from across industry in different domains to help us do a number of key activities. They firstly help us to prioritise safety actions that are most efficient at reducing the risk in the aviation system. So we have, if I take an example of our commercial air transport aeroplanes collaborative analysis group, we have 25, 30 people from organisations, associations, safety managers from major airlines, from commuter airlines, all sorts of different people in the aviation system. We have research organisations coming and sharing their part of that safety picture to help us really understand what worries them every day. The process helps us to collaborate both internally within the agency, with our colleagues in the other directorates, and then also, as I say, this collaborative piece with all the different parts of industry. And it helps us to then do those safety issue assessments. You know, if we do them with our team of analysts just in the agency all by ourselves, you know, we miss the operational experience of the pilots that have been there and seen it, the engineers and technicians who've been there trying to do that maintenance in the middle of the night, in the dark, in terrible weather, you know, design, production, all the different parts of the system start coming together to help us build this picture. And what it also starts to do is, you know, over time, and particularly in the operational domain so far, people see the EPAS and might think, as I say, it comes from this ivory tower. But the more colleagues you know, friends, people you know professionally who've been involved in this process, the more people become aware that indeed there is a process and there's a role for people in the aviation system helping us do this in a collaborative way. So just to highlight so far the collaborative groups we have in operation at the moment. So we have firstly a transversal human factors CAG that helps us specifically with human factors covering design, maintenance, operations across different domains, organisational safety, how the effect of the organisation on human factors, all of these different aspects. And we're building up now a human factors safety risk portfolio in its own right, and we're making quite good progress with that now. Then in the traditional CAT Aeroplanes world, we have a sort of traditionally CAT Aeroplanes flight ops focus group where we have quite a number of airlines. So we have KLM, we have Lufthansa, we have smaller airlines like Luxair and Widerøe, we have Boeing, we have Airbus, we have ATR. So we have lots of different organisations involved in that activity, all bringing, as I say, these key pieces of safety knowledge. We have a group on ATM and ANS with air traffic service providers, with Eurocontrol, other organisations. Likewise, aerodromes and ground handling, we have airports and ground handling organisations and cargo companies and all sorts of different people all collaborating on how we do this. Likewise, in rotorcraft, we have a specific group just for offshore helicopters. It's in some ways probably the easiest and best group we have in the sense that it's the only group we have where the entire offshore community can all sit in one room and actually have a conversation in terms of, you know, you can't get every airline in Europe and all the people in the process in the flight ops aeroplanes CAG. But in offshore helicopters, you know, 15, 20 people covers probably 90% of the industry. We then have a specific helicopter analysis team that's part of our rotorcraft committee that then looks at specific task-based problems. So at the moment we're doing analysis of HEMS operations, certain parts of loss of control for general aviation rotorcraft. So it focuses on the most important parts. Then in general aviation we have a group specifically for balloons, a group again for general aviation aeroplanes, fixed-wing aeroplanes, that works very closely with then our General Aviation Committee as an advisory body. And then we also work very closely on the glider level with the European Gliding Union and national federations, and again, collaborating with them. And then what we do is, having identified the safety issues, we then set up task-based analysis groups. So we've had one recently looking at IFR, VFR deconfliction, particularly at smaller airports where you have low cost particularly, but commercial airlines flying in uncontrolled airspace with close proximity to general aviation and other aircraft, and how do we help practically in the deconfliction in that kind of environment. And that brought together people from the CAT Aeroplanes CAG, the ATM CAG, the GA Aeroplanes CAG, from the glider community, all working together to solve this problem, and we're just finalising now a whole set of recommendations on that area. We've been doing work on dual control inputs, working also on cargo and baggage loading in the aerodrome and ground handling context, covering all sorts of different safety topics. And the key role of the collaborative groups then is really to focus on the top three parts there of the safety risk management process. So identifying the important safety issues and helping us prioritize. So what we want to be clear is that when EASA is spending time itself, and also the time of the collaborative organizations involved in this process on analysis activity, it's not just EASA saying these are the important activities, these are the key safety issues. We agree in the group, yes, we're all really worried about this problem, let's work together to analyse that together. And that's where we move into the risk assessment part, and then every meeting, we have certainly most of these CAGs, we have 3 to 4 meetings a year, continually reviewing safety performance. What's happening in the aviation system? Is there anything new coming we might not have seen? All of these different things then feed into this process. So they drive the analysis plan, and then lead ultimately to the action proposals. So the final step of the task for the collaborative groups is to provide action proposals to our different advisory bodies involving industry and the member states in order to then define the actions and work out what feeds into the EPAS. So then we have a whole set of these advisory bodies that provide strategic advice to the industry. And there's a group of strategic advisory bodies specifically covering the member states and the national authorities. So at the top level, we have this MAB, the Member States Advisory Body, with the strategic safety leaders of all the NAAs. We then have a number of domain technical advisory bodies, or TEBs as they're called, covering production and continuing airworthiness, aircrew, air operations, ATM, and aerodromes. And then we have a sectorial TEB for SMS, actually, who are meeting today in the office down the river, and then one for general aviation as well. And then what we also have on the stakeholder side for industry is a whole stakeholder advisory body structure. So at the top we have this SAB group, which is the top level strategic group, with then a number of technical committees whose main role is monitoring and advising on the implementation, particularly of rulemaking groups. So in the old system, those of you who remember that the old RAG groups, the rulemaking advisory groups, they're now effectively the techs in that context from industry. And we have those in a number of different areas. And then what we also have are what we call the sectorial committees. And the sectorial committees then provide the strategic advice that oversees the CAG activity. So from an industry perspective, if I take the CAT Flight Ops CAG, CASCOM, the committee, is they're looking at, well, what is it that the CAGs are doing? Are they working on the right analysis areas that we really think are important? It's kind of a check and balance in the system that stops the CAGs kind of going rogue and doing whatever it feels like. So the key focus then of the advisory bodies is overseeing and providing strategic advice on the work being done by the CAGs and the analysis and intelligence activity at the top. And then particularly on consulting on the actions. The main task is consulting on the EPAS and providing feedback on the draft EPAS, but they're also commenting on our safety issue assessments, our preliminary impact assessments, and then supporting the implementation of the actions themselves. So there's this huge collaborative and advisory structure that feeds into this process that means there are an awful lot of really good and productive and useful checks and balances in the system that, as I say, means that the EPAS isn't just something that we make up in our office in Cologne in isolation. So we feed into the EPAS then our safety risk management activity, other strategic drivers at European level, different planning activities, that then drive in and feed into what the EPAS looks like. What are our strategic priorities? Where do we put our resources? And then ultimately the rulemaking tasks, the safety promotion tasks, focused oversight and research. And particularly what we've started to do now, and actually my main job now in our department, is implementing a new EASA safety promotion strategy, where our main focus, we've created now a new safety promotion brand called Safety Together, where we extend this collaborative development of knowledge and solutions so that we can produce the most useful, hopefully, safety promotion material, doing things a little bit differently and hopefully really being useful. So, just to summarize all of that then, hopefully you're feeling a little bit better. We have all these collaborative activities, we have all these different people involved in supporting us in prioritizing the safety issues, the actions, and ultimately making sure that, hopefully the actions that the agency takes and has in the EPAS have been identified as the most effective to reduce the levels of risk that we have in the aviation system. We have different amounts of coordination with the system, whether we're identifying safety issues, assessing them, and then ultimately programming the actions in the EPAS. Hopefully the EPAS, when you read it, you start to see, and we're trying to build much more of the information about the background intelligence that leads and drives the EPAS, so that you get a better view as people from industry as to exactly where did all this come from. And hopefully then provides a much more coordinated approach to the way we develop and manage our safety priorities. So we have lots of interest here. We spend lots of time in our world doing strategic planning and all of these things. It's not just kind of dreaming of what the pretty future might look like and kind of hoping for the best. We have a lot of systematic effort and collaborative support from a huge amount of organizations that help us do this. And certainly if I had one plea, or not necessarily a plea, but one thing to take away is, how can you help in your organizations help us build that safety picture? What part of that piece of the safety picture do you have that we might not have? And how can you help us understand what that piece of that safety picture looks like so we can make the right decisions? So thanks very much. Hopefully that's been useful, interesting, enlightening. And if there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I think it clearly showed that we are all together in this, and we need to collaborate and exchange the information to get the complete safety picture. We got just one question via Slido, and maybe you can answer that. Does EASA currently or plan to collaborate with organizations in other industries to collate safety data on tech which is newer to aerospace, for example, batteries?
For example, what's the last? Batteries.
Batteries.
Yeah, so while we started very much in the operational side of things, there's lots of work to look at how can we collaborate, particularly on the technical side, on the more technical side. We certainly have an aspiration to do much more work on maintenance activities and what are the safety challenges in maintenance, and likewise also understanding design and production, what are the safety challenges and how can they feed into the EPAS as well. So whether it's specifically, one of the challenges we have is we start too many groups, we create lots of expectation and we overpromise and underdeliver. So making sure we've got the system and the process right before we reach out into other domains, but certainly the more we can collaborate, the more we can build up that picture. So yeah, certainly those kinds of areas are very important, and hopefully we'll get there in the coming year or so.
Any other questions from the floor? It's over there.
Yeah, Dennis Santamaria from Eurocomposites. Thank you, John. Great presentation. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. We are all very safety conscious, and since the currents reporting came in, we feed all that information to you. And I'm sure you're going to get there eventually where we can tap in and find out that when we reported something, what exactly happened and exactly what is the results of our input. Because at the moment, we are feeding it in, but there is no system where we can go in and tap in and say, look, we reported it 2 or 3 times. This was the results of EASA, went around the world and got a solution, and then we feel a little more comfortable. But I think it's early days at the moment because you're collecting information, you're setting up the system. But can you assure us that one day we'll be in a position where we can see what is the results of our feeding you with information?
Yeah, so we're taking a 2-step approach to that, and certainly one of the key things we're very aware of, that if we're going to keep this handle of this system of occurrence reporting really going, is that there's nothing better than feedback that provides the way of understanding why you need to keep feeding this system. So it's a very important thing. Within our safety promotion plan, the first step is us providing a lot more information about the results of the intelligence. So initially, you won't necessarily be able to see your individual occurrence, but you'll be able to see how your reports contributed to a particular safety issue or safety problem. And that's something we'll be launching in February next year as part of our new Safety Together safety promotion activity. And then the next steps is looking at how can you provide more information back to organisations on the individual reports. One of the problems we have is partly one of volume, but we're building within the management system that manages the occurrences, the ability to group occurrences into safety issues. So we might not be able to come back to each individual organisation on every single report, but be able to group them into issues and say, okay, you reported this problem with batteries here or this undercarriage here, and this is what was done about that. So yeah, it's a continual activity for us. We very much appreciate that there's a need for us to get much better at how we provide feedback. So yeah.
Next question. So everything was crystal clear from your side. Perfect, John. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.